Part 46. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Bulletin Lau Bulletin Si Bulletin Me. Chapter 451. As the chaos spread to the capital, the atmosphere of disaster was everywhere. All the troops belonging to the old emperor were killed without mercy. Therefore, whether it was the palace, the city wall, or the patrol headquarters in the city, the court could see freshly dead bodies. The location of the capital was actually in a very embarrassing position. Who among the four lords could obtain the ownership of the prosperous capital with a population of 1 million? And, whether getting the capital meant orthodoxy, no one could give an answer. There was another way, which was to completely destroy it, but it seemed not worth it. So in the chaos, the four lords were also competing for interests. In the atmosphere of the enemy approaching the city, most of the residents did not flee in the end. They stayed at home in a panic, listening to the shouting and killing outside, the sound of magic explosions, and the collapse of buildings, and could not sleep all night until the next day. When the morning sun shone on the palace again, the coup was over. Because it was in the dark, the plan was well planned, and most of the players without connections did not have the opportunity to appreciate the moment in the chaos. Teams of players completed their tasks in an orderly manner, occupied targets, eliminated enemies, and destroyed buildings. Even many players who wandered at night were killed as hostile forces. Therefore, if you want to see the whole process, I am afraid that you can only watch it on the forum, and you can only watch it first if you are a VIP. Similarly, the ownership of the capital was announced, and it was finally given to the gourd little King Kong with the smallest territory. This was the agreement of the four lords, and it did not mean that the remaining three had no benefits. Moreover, the capital located in the border area of the new kingdom would no longer be the capital, and would gradually lose its meaning and decline. However, things will not end like this. It can be predicted that in the next few days, a larger-scale catastrophe will occur in the territory of Saint Oteros. The struggle in the palace laid the foundation for the result of the split. No heir escaped, and the idea of restoring the old emperor became a thing of the past. Even so, there are still a large number of royalists in the empire. They are loyal to His Majesty, and their power seems small. Due to the involvement of foreign forces, the development of the situation is not as beautiful as humans imagine. 1 hour after the coup ended, a message appeared on the homepage of the gate, using the most detailed and authoritative data to analyze the cause, process, and result of the entire coup in the capital. 15 minutes later, 4 world broadcasts announced the birth of 4 countries. Tip: Player Sun established the country, God. Tip: Player Hermit established the country, Sword. Tip: Player Hulu Zyajin Gang established the country, Jeng. Tip: Player Drazulb established the country, Idnaviv. With the birth of the country, a series of lists such as the comprehensive strength ranking of the country have undergone drastic changes, and the basic data of each country are also provided to players for query. For example, Sun's God has a land area of 7,523 pieces, a population of 13 million, and an army of 400,000. Hermit's Sword has a land area of 4,377 pieces, a population of 8.5 million, and an army of 310,000. The above data is easy to find. The four lords together control nearly 1.5 million troops, while the resistance is only more than 300,000. Of course, if the assistance of foreign forces is included, I believe they can hold out for a long time. What is more peculiar is that within 24 hours after the coup, the number of national territories of Sun and Hermit showed a regular growth trend. In one day, God increased from 7,523 territories to 7,732, and Sword increased from 4,377 to 4,455. If it continues, it may be a very scary thing. However, with the start of the war between the two major forces with the country as the end, the significance of confidentiality is no longer important, so more newcomers emerge. For example, the Lord is said to be in his early 20s. Even if we don't know what he looks like, there are always countless women who want to marry him. Sun's name has become known to everyone. In the past history, his game name has changed many times. The gate did not include him in the standard statistics of WTP, but directly gave him a ranking of around 500. Now he is in the top 20, and he is shining brightly, and players are arguing about him, comparing him with the old first class Never. The most significant difference is that if Never is a pure player, Sun seems to be very mixed, so the debate about who is stronger and who is weaker has no conclusion, and it has become the best topic of the year. When the coup just ended, Shen Xian returned to Dusk City once. The two lords were still thinking about it, and they were greedy and wanted to get more benefits. I will play hard to get and deal with my own affairs first. From a distance, Dusk City is now shrouded in the influence of the fallen boundary. More and more demons appear in the city openly. Unlike in the past, residents call demons their guardians. It is true that demons have always been the embodiment of evil and the spokesperson of conspiracy in history, but with the subtle influence of faith, residents are no longer afraid of them. Miss Yao was still lukewarm towards him. In fact, Shen Xian knew that this was a result of feelings growing over time. As long as a woman was a woman, she would always have some feelings for the people around her. Although she could not be said to be useless, he had no time to deal with this young lady because his own affairs had not been settled yet. However, to his surprise, Miss Yao secretly disappeared from the site of the Order Association. The Order Association and Twilight City were in opposition, and Miss Yao was in a position of being in the limelight. She had accepted tasks such as eradicating evil, but because of the relationship between her partners, she was ultimately unable to achieve it. I think normal people would not agree to this. One is virtual and the other is real. Reality is always better than virtuality. However, there is no need to withdraw. Perhaps this way will be more free. He could not guess the woman's mind because he was not a love saint. It was a pity. It was a relief for Miss Yao. The achievements of a free mage might not be worse than staying in the Order Association. You must know that in addition to a super mage organization like the Order Association, demons are also proficient in magic. Many great demon lords are all-rounders of magics, but like dragons, demons are generally not seen using magic. She has more choices. Miss Yao also had good news to report to him. After a few days of searching, before leaving, I checked the list of Order Association mages in Twilight City. There were only Catherine and I. The Order Association itself has a very high threshold for entry. Only those with very talented people can enter. Relatively speaking, the forces that interact with it are often large in scale, so it is impossible to find Order Association spies in Twilight City. Shen Xian checked Catherine's loyalty. Because she saved them, it has been hovering around 90. Although the two are not the pillars of Twilight City at present, the problem is not big, so they can be left alone. Online game DungeonMaster. Author, Bulletin Lao Bulletin Si Bulletin Me. Chapter 452. After cleaning up internally, external prevention will be much more efficient. In the recent stage, because the old devil Ilkanbira remains silent without waiting for the new mission of the three masters, the chance of being blocked will not exist. They will settle down a bit and have enough time to develop. After talking about the Order Association, Miss Yao opened the map bar and proposed to build a city near the ancient passage in the north. The straight line distance from here to the ancient passage is about 600 kilometers. Geographically speaking, although there are a supply town, but it has the potential to become a big city. It does not produce any special items, even simple food, handicrafts, etc., but relying on the advantage of the southernmost exit of an ancient passage is enough to maintain the operation of the city. Growing by collecting taxes. Yes. At present, because the contract signed with White Isle and other studios has not broken down, the flow of goods from the north to the south is very large. Twilight City only accounts for 28.3% of it, and the rest includes a large number of players from the south, east, and surface. They have no access to the dwarf world in the northwest and must make deals with the Council of Skills. Moreover, in recent years, the number of equipment exported by the Council of Skills has more than doubled, and the quality has improved to a higher level. This has made dwarf equipment popular in the north, becoming the best configuration that players without sufficient manufacturing capabilities dream of. In this regard, we are not very competitive. We mainly rely on the advantages of enchanted weapons for reprocessing. Although we have mastered a lot of dwarf skills, after all, without the support of dwarves, we will still be a little behind. As if aware of the vigorous vitality of the Skills Council, Shen Xian felt that Twilight City's trade volume in this area would continue to decline. In the early and mid-term, due to transportation and geographical restrictions respectively, the equipment manufacturing industry in Twilight City prospered. In fact, the dwarves were not very good at exporting equipment on a large scale. However, because of the world mission at the end of the North Split, history was changed, and the dwarf world the ruler became a unique dwarf king who was used to dealing with humans. The final result forced them to find another way out. According to Miss Yao's estimate, the new city could reach a population of about 200,000, providing Twilight City with a monthly tax of 2.6 million. This is pure profit and basically does not cost much. Such a good place to sit and collect money used to be unnoticed because of the existence of the North Split Mountains and the isolation between the extreme north and the north. But now the situation has changed. It has to be said that the kingdom is a dynamic game. One method of making money can never be used to the end. Old business opportunities disappear and new business opportunities are born. Just like a forest, it comes and goes. Things in the city have been finalized. With the demise of the St. Atros Empire, Twilight City has been given a few months to develop. It won't be long before the new city becomes Twilight City's new revenue growth point. It's just that heaven has revealed it terrifying the idea made them feel that the crisis was approaching. Looking at the changes in recent days, they knew that if they allowed the two lords in the west to let go, with the help of their wealth advantage, the entire western part of the continent would become theirs. I have to say that Sun's plan is crazy. Looking back on the past, if a billionaire suddenly proposed to buy all the accounts of a server, he would become the king of the entire server. It seems a little funny, and I think he can definitely buy it. Agent, he did achieve his goal and won. Others laughed at her as an idiot, but the truth has always been in the hands of a few people. As long as the goal can be achieved, what does it matter? In short, it does not violate the rules of the game. However, the two remaining lords should be more worried. Don't they know that their rival Twilight City is worried? Shen Xian said. They will not let go of making a big fuss about this and reaping benefits. The current situation is not optimistic. The key point is who Sun will choose as their leader. Be the first to strike. An idea formed in Shen Xian's mind. If they knew about it, they would be able to take countermeasures. However, passive defense is not good. Maybe, they need to secretly add fuel to the flames and make the situation clear quickly. So you've come up with a solution? What is it? Seeing his thoughtful face, Miss Yao couldn't help but ask. Operation. Since they are hesitant, let us help them make up their mind. Sun has no time to take care of us now. After the split, new laws and policies need to be formulated. There are a lot of things to be done and they have no time to take care of us. We can rest assured. Be bold and do it. Shen Xian said very seriously, make them aware of the crisis. Only by realizing it can we take the initiative. We cannot penetrate deeply into the underground world in the West. For us, losing some of our interests is not a big problem. He strolled back to his temple. Compared with the city center, the temple in the fifth stage was more impressive. In the small space, it seemed to be occupied by a towering and terrifying devil statue, which made people who walked in feel a sense of wonder. A sense of awe. The deepest part of the temple is forbidden to believers and is divided into several parts. One is a prison, which is used to imprison powerful people. All kinds of powerful creatures or races from all planes can be seen here, even some terrible envoys of the kingdom of God. Shadow Dragon is entrenched here, monitoring the prisoners under his management, and conducting experiments on them. The other part is the bedroom for some distinguished guests. Ilkhan Bela is staying here now, so he doesn't need to harass the residents of Dusk City. Unlike demons, demons will definitely commit crimes premeditatedly, and they disdain to do meaningless killings. The last one is the place where the divine body is placed. His incarnation, after clever construction, is like a puppet in charge of his own divine duties and hides inside. The incarnation cannot move, just like a real god. The incarnation has a strong enough body and extraordinary power. For the sake of safety, or for the divine duties and the insignificant source of God, he will not rashly send out the incarnation as his own fighting tool. Nowadays, the incarnation can provide a stable divine attribute bonus, which greatly increases the tax revenue in the territory. Anyone who believes in the Sunset God cult can get a few extra gold taxes, and if they meet a noble, they will get hundreds more gold. However, to transform a normal incarnation into a god and mutate his skills, he must first master enough knowledge of magic, religion, gods and planes, all of which require level 7 or above. This is not a real god, as can be seen from the fact that the system did not broadcast. It is completely different from Chris's, and is a substitute. Of course, a mortal body cannot bear the vast power of God, so he had to do this. This trick seemed very crude in Ilkhan Bela's eyes. He saw the old devil and quietly went to the place where the god's body was placed, ignoring the constraints of space, as if he was admiring and regretting. He was a high-ranking devil, so naturally he did not need faith to increase his level, although killing a powerful demon was enough for the experience points distributed to millions of people. He seemed to have something to say. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Buledin Lau Buledin Si Buledin Me. Chapter 453. I still refuse to give up my mortal body. Ilkhan Bela clicked his tongue and said towards the footsteps that sounded behind him. Not far from him, in the middle of the jade-carved arch, was a group of extremely dense light, and a humanoid body that was as stiff as a corpse and had a solemn and majestic expression could be vaguely seen in the center. That is the divine body, which has the same level as itself. When encountering any damage, it will receive an additional 50% damage reduction, just like daggers, fist blades, and other light weapons attacking buildings. The footsteps stopped, and the old devil looked at him expressionlessly. Anyway, although you are still a god, it is really rare to be able to achieve such a level. Moreover, maybe you will become a good candidate. Among all the gods, kingdom may not be bound by annoying rules. Thank you, Lord Ilkhan Bela, for the compliment. Is there anything you need me to do recently? Shen Xian tried to accept the task. The old devil shook his head, as if to warn him, hurry up and finish repairing your artifact. You know, strength is the first priority at all times. Seeing that Shen Xian was still hesitant and hesitated to speak, the old devil laughed and said, I think you really want to know the big conspiracy being planned by the three masters. In fact, there is no need to test at all. You can guess it just with your brain arrive. He sighed again, it's just that that time has not yet come. Even the World Stone has been quietly hidden. Twilight City only needs to complete its responsibilities. The old devil still hasn't disclosed his intentions in Twilight City, but several issues have been confirmed. For example, the masters of hell are indeed planning a big thing, but they have no way of knowing because they are not at a high level. However, Shen Xian would not relax his vigilance because of this. He looked at Ilkhanbira's appearance and the demeanor of his divine body, and he always felt that there was something hidden, as if he had some unpredictable thoughts that he didn't want him to know. A week has passed quickly. In the game, 3 months have passed. The split of the St. Atros Empire has settled and become a foregone conclusion. First, the Kiryu Society of Japan sent more than 100,000 troops to assist the rebels in their attempt to capture it was cheap, but he was accidentally attacked by a terrifying forbidden spell-level magic, killing tens of thousands of people overnight. The armies that continued to resist were eliminated one by one, and what was left was just the tug of war between the four kingdoms. Regarding the overnight destruction of one of the two poles of the continent, the Pharaoh Empire, the Phoenix Council and the South China Sea Alliance did not make a strong stance. They all seemed to recognize the birth of the four countries. However, no one knows what attitude they will hold in the future. One thing worth celebrating during this period is that the soul center of the Holy Dragon Kingdom was smuggled out. In the Far East continent, the Order Association's power is not strong, but it is not weak either, so it can successfully complete its mission amidst the enemy's pursuit and interception. This is really a difficult task. It is said that this led to the downgrade of dozens of players above level 100. It has to be said that it was a tragic victory. There were only a handful of level 100 players on the entire continent. In order to prevent one guild from gathering tens of thousands of level 100 players to sweep the world, it completely makes NPC meaningless, so Kingdom has extremely strict control over levels. The 7 copies of the Soul Center remain unchanged, but the completion progress has been changed. I believe that as long as the remaining 4 copies are obtained, Twilight City can have its own artifact. There are still only 3 items on the list of artifacts. They are only a handful, distributed among several small and medium-sized forces. Turning our perspective to the St. Atros Empire, a large number of professional players have been withdrawn from God in the past week because their territories have been bought out. What exactly is going on? In fact, many players have long known that it is nothing to professional players. They exchange the equivalent of decades of living expenses for the territory they have developed over the past few years. I believe that what matters most to professional players is not honor but profit. It is the most cost-effective deal for professional players. The statistical result is that up to 2,000 pieces of territory have been transferred. The lowest ones have dangerous terrain. Only some villages' territories have been sold for a few thousand, while the ones with cities are ridiculously high. They may be as high as millions or tens of millions. Of course, the number of cities is not. There are only a dozen cities in total worth tens of millions. At present, the territory as a virtual asset in Kingdom is indeed worth this price, and the value may rise in the future. Players in various countries are close to saturation after nearly 2 years of development, but they are still far from the upper limit, and the development is good. The territory is like a self-circulating system, which basically does not require any management to operate. For new players, it can give them a higher starting point, and it can also meet the needs of deleting accounts, rebirth, or re-entering after not playing. Due to the extraordinary large-scale acquisition, Heaven's power in the Western continent has expanded greatly. Currently, there are more than a dozen guilds stationed in God and Sword. The largest ones have nearly 10 million members and hundreds of thousands of permanent members, respectively. Manage the territory and develop the army for several high-ranking kings. This is a symbol of strength. However, what worries the two lords Gord Little King Kong and Drazzled recently is not such a thing, but the riots in a city called Ahab. The city is located on the border of Jing and God and belongs to God, because the nobles in the north are relatively large. There are many poor people in the south. As a result, they are opposed to each other in the city and have serious ambivalence. The cause was the discovery of a gold mine in a rift valley near the city. The reserves of a small gold mine were about 250,000. Players who were not at the city lord level would definitely be jealous of the gold mine. In fact, the reserves of the gold mine were found to be large scale, that is, about 25 million reserves. The discoverer was a poor man from the south of the empire. When he found it, he immediately mined a little and then secretly refined it, wanting to make a fortune. Who knew that the matter was discovered by a local noble, so he led his private soldiers to swallow it. Normally, the benefits of discovering the gold mine should be given to the discoverer. If such an unfair phenomenon is solved quickly, the upper class will choose to turn a blind eye. Unfortunately, the poor man who discovered it is not easy to mess with. He summoned his mercenary friends in the south of Jing and pretended to be robbers to wipe out the noble family. A new emergency occurred. Their actions were discovered and the local lord intervened. As a result, the two sides had a major conflict in the suburbs of the city. About thousands of soldiers were killed, and the ownership of the mine was still not resolved. For a big country, a medium-sized gold mine may seem insignificant, but it cannot be ceded at will. Due to its special location, part of it is on the border between the two sides. The two sides conducted close consultations, but the conflict between the resentful nobles and the poor in the city was provoked, and things became somewhat difficult to resolve. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Bulletin Lao Bulletin Si Bulletin Me. Chapter 454. For the kings of the two countries, their purpose is to maintain peace. Not long after the empire was split, the two countries began to fight. This is really an unwise choice. However, in view of the expansion of God in the past few days, there are still a large number of players believe that now is a good time to catch their opponents off guard. This led to suspicion. Moreover, the low level of satisfaction among the residents has led to constant riots, which has a lot to do with the low level of the local lords. All conflicts cannot be resolved at once, and it is difficult for both parties to reconcile. One party relies on itself as the first discoverer, and the other party relied on its own mining capabilities, and privately, a large-scale conflict broke out again during high-level peace talks between the two parties. The new conflict once again resulted in thousands of people being killed. Under normal circumstances, no one would be willing to sacrifice their lives, but with the stimulation of gold, people can take risks. The matter of the medium-sized gold mine is actually not a big deal, because in a sensitive period, both sides have to take it seriously. The matter itself seems to be very normal, and there is no trace of the involvement of other forces. In any case, a kind of hostility between the North and the South is growing. Mir's underground world, the Thieves' Guild. The young exiled aristocrat Zhu Liuxiang walked through the bustling crowd and quietly exchanged the code with the old man in front of the bar. As the secret door opened, he entered a completely dark room. There was a man wearing gold and silver patterns. The young priest Sakyamuni in intertwined divine robes is waiting for you. Twilight is coming, my child. Yes, no one can escape the judgment of the doomsday, Zhu Liuxiang said respectfully to the dusk chanter in front of him, and took out a certificate. My mission is completed. Yes, Sakyamuni nodded approvingly at you and took the certificate. Your skills are quite outstanding and your mind is equally flexible. I believe you can accept further teachings from the gods. Shakya touched you and took out a mission scroll, grinning. This is a skill mission book that confuses people. As long as you complete it, it will be much more convenient when dealing with people. Zhu Liuxiang carefully took the scroll and stuffed it into the pocket of his underwear. He worked hard to learn such a skill. He had completed n steps of preliminary tasks before, and even challenged the spies of the two kingdoms to stir up the development of the situation directly under their noses. Ultimately leading to a riot occurred, but it was worth it. It could make him different and less like a thief. This meant that he would steal without any scruples, which meant that he was becoming the king of thieves. Morse, hand of the Windamon takes a step forward on the road. He walked along the doorway where he came from. Sakyamuni continued to read the mission description and sighed, I didn't expect the plan to go so smoothly. The mutual hostility between the people of Jing and God is getting more and more intense. If it continues, it will definitely be possible drag Sword and Idnaviv into it. Next, the two major countries should send troops to suppress and forcibly calm the situation. If this continues, what we are doing will be meaningless. Sakyamuni touched your head and continued to think. He recalled the explanation given by the landlady when she handed over the task. Suddenly his eyes lit up and he said hello to the bewitching demon beside him, we have something to do. The demon immediately winked at him, followed him, hugged him, flew up, and disappeared under the cover of darkness. The night was getting thick. Dozens of adventurers secretly gathered near Ahab. The man at the front was in his 40s or 50s. He was still wearing bandages and was holding a two-handed sword. He looked strong. Mr. Golar, can we go? Two thieves followed him and asked. The man named Golar was the adventurer who discovered the gold mine. Yes, let's go. Have you packed your things? We must not make any mistakes. Golar seriously warned the people around him. He learned from his friends that due to the money offensive of the Hadleyson family, the 5% of the minerals that he could have received, and the discovery fee of about 1 million gold, would be deprived by the city lord of less than 1%, which was a waste of money. Beggar. He couldn't stand the corruption at the top, so he decided to destroy their peace talks. As a level 78 adventurer, he is rich in experience. Behind him are his good friends who have been with him for many years. Dozens of them are preparing to go deep into the Hadleyson family to kill their entire family and seek revenge. He knows how many recent events have occurred. Their family was heavily guarded today, but once this time passed, he might not have any excuse. If he succeeds, as the national honorary who saves the situation, his supporters will guarantee his life and even reward him with wealth. But if he fails, he will bear infamy and be infamy forever. He wants to be above board and leave any evidence behind. This is what the supporter said. Although he doesn't know where he comes from, judging from his accent, he seems to be from the South China Sea Alliance. A cheap level 5 scroll was enough to take down a group of private soldiers. Goral asked the thieves to control some annoying guys outside first, and then went straight to the room of the patriarch of the Hudson family. A bloody massacre is about to happen. Sakyamuni touched you far away, recalling the reports of several evil demons. The Dongcheng Club of the South China Sea Alliance got involved for some kind of benefit and secretly supported Goral's reckless actions. The results of the actions will lead to the death of the Hudson family. The death of God and the ill will between some NPCs in the upper echelon of God towards Jing made it difficult to maintain the peace talks. He needs to add fuel to the fire. The seducer around him released his own magic, controlling many dangerous characters for the adventurer, making the action much faster. Even the city defense army patrolling at night did not notice the infiltration of a group of people, and passed by without seeing anything. Several members of the Hudleyson family who were sleeping were killed while hugging the maids around them. Then, as more people got into trouble, the matter was finally exposed. The family's followers rushed out to fight with the adventurer. Shakya went into the secret warehouse where gold was piled up alone and mixed several pieces of special ore. He then left without leaving any trace and watched the development of the situation. Golar felt that today was unusually smooth, and he was a little uneasy. He and two thieves ran in the corridor and suddenly saw a black shadow disappear behind the half-open door. Stop, the thief rushed up and entered a room. There was no one in the room. Through perception, it seemed that there were some magic traps. There were some ores piled in the room, which turned out to be gold ore with a high purity. It seemed to be dug out from the mine he found for identification. Golar suddenly noticed that there were several special minerals mixed in with the ores. Is this sapphire? Golar said seriously, let's go and take the things away. We may be saved. Just returned home. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Buletin Lau Buletin Si Buletin Me. Chapter 455. In an appraisal shop in Jingguo, south of Ahab, the scholar checked the ore over and over, and said to several adventurers who brought the ore out for appraisal, "It is indeed a sapphire, and the quality is quite good. From the soil analysis, it is in the same location as the gold mine." The appraiser didn't say anything more. He knew Golar and knew his affairs, so he naturally knew the meaning of what he brought over. Golar took over the identified ore with a smile that he hadn't seen in a long time on his face. He grabbed the remaining adventurers and said, "Let's go. If nothing else happens, God may send troops here." "Army? How could it be? Do you mean the city defense army allows it?" "No, they may be pretending. As long as they take us away and put us on trial in secret, the matter will be solved," Goral explained. "I see, let's go quickly. Do you have a goal?" "Yes, I want to find someone," Golar replied in a deep voice. Since the Hadleyson family was wiped out, Ahab city has fallen into chaos. Negotiators from both sides argued hard, hoping that Jing would hand over the murderer. Due to the large number of members of the Hadleyson family, not all of them had been wiped out, and there were still some family members hold hereditary titles within God, with high status and considerable influence. Strangely, the simple idea of jointly developing and sharing the gold mines that had been expressed earlier was now rejected by Jing's negotiator. It seems that for some unknown reason, Jing strongly condemned the ugly behavior of the Hadleyson family in Ahab city. The culprits of the chaos not only violated the law and oppressed the discoverers during the negotiation process, but also sent troops into De Jing's country to search for them afterwards. They should not be held responsible. Not only that, God should also hand over the ownership of the gold mine to the southern country. Scene. Things have become a bit difficult to deal with. Even Sun, who should not be involved in the matter, is also paying attention. In his heart, he has no intention of taking action against other countries. He learned the truth through some investigation. It can be said that the person who needs to bear the main responsibility should be the city lord of Ahab city, a player who colluded with the NPC and wanted to bypass negotiations in private and make money through the gold mine. Not every player is noble and selfless. They may PK and kill people for a piece of equipment. In this case, how can players not take risks for a mine that can exchange for their living expenses in the next few years? This is the bane of the two conflicts. Sun knew that God officials were primarily responsible, and he never thought about giving up the mineral deposits. According to his further investigation, what was discovered locally was not just a gold mine. There was also an associated sapphire mine near the gold mine, which sounded a bit like incredibly. There are actually many such examples in Kingdom, thus doubling the value of the mine again, with a value of approximately 100 million. The negotiating minister did not know about this matter, and the player city owner concealed it and did not report it. After the confirmation, he denied that he knew that there was a sapphire mine near the gold mine. The above is no longer important. What is important is that God cannot sit back and seize the mineral deposits. He first removed the player from his position, and then issued a nationwide wanted order as punishment for the player. He also ordered the remaining Hadleyson family to shut up, and then quietly talked to Gord Little King Kong. Sun knows the personalities of the surrounding players very well, which is the key to his victory in the conversation with Calabash King Kong. He knew that Gord Little King Kong was afraid of trouble, or that he did not want a strong enemy to keep staring at him. He was afraid of his own threats, so Sun only made a serious speech to finally force Gord Little King Kong to give up the benefits he was about to obtain, or to maintain the previous. The allocation is half per person. The situation became somewhat unexpected again. It seems that this incident cannot have a greater impact. If it continues, the instigator behind it will inevitably surface. "Can't we help Goral anymore?" the player expressed sympathy. "Can we create new conflicts?" In this way, the kingdom's intelligence agents will come back to visit you. The remaining people pondered, do we really have no solution? A voice rang out, no, I think, even if Gourd Little King Kong agrees with Sun's idea and even obeys him, he may not necessarily think so in his heart. Sun's threat has actually brought a bad image to him. I feel that Sun may use similar methods to force him again and again in the future. We've actually succeeded. Yes, Gourd Little King Kong no longer believes that Sun is a good ally, nor is he worthy of his surrender. This is the result. The remaining people thought about this matter for a while and felt that it made sense, so, the door to the western continent has been opened by us. How to deal with the remaining Drazulb? There is a Gourd Little King Kong that takes the bait, why can't there be a second one? I do not understand. The voice could only patiently explain to them, we don't need too many allies now. Too many will only divide the interests equally and reduce the effect. Moreover, the benefits brought to them are enough that other lords will be jealous. As long as after a period of development, there will be the lord who sees this kind of benefit will try to actively think about the benefits of cooperating with Twilight City. A few days passed. As expected, Hulu Zyajin's trust in Sun began to gradually decrease. He felt that if he continued to play along with Sun, his fate would be very bad one day, so he wanted to find another way out. In Jing's new capital, Hulu Zyajin secretly met with the Lord of Dusk City and night and day. Lord, it's great that you can come in person. I believe our cooperation will be a win-win result. Both parties seemed very enthusiastic, but the progress of the negotiations was not smooth at all. Hulu Zyajin ordered his subordinates to collect data from all aspects of Dusk City more than 10 days ago, hoping to take the initiative in the negotiation process. Similarly, Dusk City did exactly the same thing, wanting to achieve the best goal by grasping the opponent's weaknesses. In terms of daily necessities, such as food, beverages, spices, clothing, jewelry, furniture, and luxury goods, Jing has an absolute advantage, which is caused by the prosperity of the human world, so it can make the satisfaction of the imperial capital reach more than 90. The underground world hopes that they can share these resources. After solving these problems, the population of the territory will not change, but the quality will be greatly improved. If the probability of generating an NPC with attributes in a harsh environment was 1% before, it will become 1/10 when the satisfaction rate is above 90. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Bulletin Lao Bulletin Si Bulletin Me. Chapter 456. What an enviable number, no one would refuse such a temptation, even if the underground could occasionally guarantee up to 90% satisfaction, most of the time, they couldn't maintain it, and all they could rely on was their level advantage. Gourd Little King Kong and his staff continued to discuss the various terms of cooperation with Mir, or to be blunt, she, and Twilight City. Of course, the process was not very optimistic, just because they were determined that they must get everything done before the end of this negotiation. Miss Xiao also has her own cronies. Since she has taken control of more departments of the consortium, she has rich and inexhaustible human resources, and the top talents in the world are at her disposal. Therefore, it would be absolutely foolish to hope for a quick end, unless some unexpected big event miraculously occurs, to place hopes on an almost impossible event. Some terms have been recognized by both parties, such as the provision of 3 major categories of goods: wine, clothing, and art. These 3 items have a large production volume and weak internal digestion capacity. For Mir, this not so prosperous country has no need. The only advantage is that it is transferred to Twilight City without cultivating an unimaginably strong enemy under their feet. In terms of demand, it can reach hundreds of millions of gold. Gourd Little King Kong is very satisfied with such a deal. He believes that if they would encounter the threat of Twilight City, their country would have been annexed by God or sword in the north long ago. Still struggling on a few key steps. As an important ally of Twilight City, Mir is part of the negotiation content. Just relying on Twilight City to go far away and support through material trade cannot compare with the advantage of being close to the water. The two sides refuse to give in to each other. As a member of the non-sect, King Kong, who exists as a buffer zone, could not give greater support. Similarly, King Kong, who felt the strong side of God, still felt that Twilight City was a place that could not be used casually. You need to be careful when dealing with opponents. It lasted for nearly a day, which was a long enough time in the virtual world. Staying in the most luxurious room in the palace, Shen Xian and Miss Xiao were still thinking about a solution. It seems that the two sides are evenly matched. Don't expect any further progress in the negotiations. Miss Xiao looked up at the beautiful spring scenery outside and said. Don't you have any good suggestions? Do you have to go home? There are currently differences between the two sides on several terms of support for Mir. Mir provides Jing with a certain degree of intelligence support and some military action support that is inconvenient for him to come forward. Development assistance but met with opposition. Jing Ke did not think that the underground world adjacent to him was an easy enemy to deal with, even though Mir was only a small part of the underground world in the western continent. The two shook their heads and felt that they had to go back. Since the negotiation could not be concluded, why waste time on such a matter? Moreover, even if there was not much room for cooperation between Jing and Twilight City, as long as other forces participated, as long as they were not on the same front as God, he believes it can have similar benefits. Shen Xian learned that in a few days, the two major player countries, Honghuang and Freedom, would send special envoys to visit the King of Jing. The news could be seen everywhere. Does it prove an attitude of support? Warn Jing's enemies not to act rashly. Although they have achieved a staged victory, they are still too far away from the real end. Let's go back and say goodbye to gourd little King Kong. Shen Xian made up his mind. There are still many things that need to be done. Miss Xiao hesitated for a while, murmured, and followed his footsteps towards the main hall of the palace. Lord, are you really going to leave? I think we can discuss it again. Gourd little King Kong expressed his hope to stay. Thank you for your kindness. Because we have some things to do, we have to leave. I believe that Your Majesty, you have received a lot of the benefits you asked for. There was no reluctance on Shen Xian's face, as if he was the winner of the negotiation and was about to make a triumphant return. The two figures walked quickly, saying goodbye and going back through the set space coordinates, leaving only the gourd little King Kong, who seemed to be unwilling to get any more benefits. The two returned to Twilight City. As a result, a new balance of power on the mainland was born. They believed that peace would remain for a while. The only thing they had to be careful about was the Order Association that was tracking them. As long as they were not caught by them, Twilight, the future of the city will be bright. A month has passed, almost 2 months, and most players are busy with in-game affairs while dealing with real-life work. New things are born every day and every night. For example, many people have recently been discussing what it would be like to move their investment business to space. Will it be like the Age of Discovery, where they will find endless treasures in the land of gold? For in a world that is expanding day by day, this is good news. It means that human beings are still making progress and have not sunk in the material life created by technology. Not only is technology still developing, but moral standards are also improving. As long as there are no accidents, in the face of highly developed productivity, society will advance at a high speed in the next few decades. They will further expand settlements on the Moon, exploration stations on Mars, and move towards the star ocean described by science fiction novelists. Go ahead. In addition to the affairs of Dusk City, Miss Xiao had countless documents to review every day and night for the two new groups. Until this time, she realized Dabakay's unique mentality towards games. She didn't want her spiritual garden to be polluted by reality and lose its purity, but completely enjoyed the atmosphere of the game. It can be said that this is the real game, the real entertainment, but she has already thrown herself into it and can't help herself. A year in the country is equivalent to January in reality. The monthly annual summary is always very important and can reflect the measure of the development of Dusk City. The population is rising, the trade volume is increasing, the military expenditure is even more terrifying, and technological research and development is always a bottomless pit. Now these data are reflected in the data column and the statistics column, and there is no shrinking trend, but facing the increasingly powerful enemy, he is still not satisfied with the status quo. He needs a stronger army to sweep across the continent, and to achieve it, he needs the power of the country. Shen Xian wandered in the temple. Recently, he completely abandoned the leveling activities and focused on the business of the charlatan. He maintained the speed of 1 level every 2 weeks. The increase of believers was facing a bottleneck. At this time, he learned that in an alien plane, the members of the sect found a new source of faith. Sweat, forgot to post after writing. Online game DungeonMaster. Author, Bulletin Lao Bulletin Si Bulletin Me. Chapter 457. Sun is not in the palace most of the time, and spends more time dealing with affairs in reality. He asked Clown beside him, "Do you know what the Lord is doing recently?" Clown, who has long been deified and quietly developed among the gods, shook his head, "Who knows? I can't think of it." For the biggest opponent, Sun always remains vigilant. Even after nearly 1/8 of the land on the Night Star continent became their territory, he still dared not take it lightly. Due to the limitations of technology, heaven often cannot find the trace of the Lord, and when he can find it, it is always in Shanghai, which everyone knows. Therefore, whenever he thinks of this, he always feels a little angry. Counting the conflicts between the two sides, there was a large-scale conflict once, and there were as many as hundreds of small conflicts. However, because neither side could figure out the potential of the other side, the conflict always stopped at a certain point, and did not result in a lose-lose situation. Such simple conflicts will not continue. As the division of power becomes more and more obvious, the disputes will only intensify day by day until they are out of control and become the final decisive battle. And these days, for some unknown reason, the Lord disappeared again, and he didn't even know what he was doing in the virtual world. What the hell is Twilight City doing? Sun thought to himself, but he would not be affected. After occupying the Western continent, plus the colonies of the Broken Continent and the secret members in the Barbarian Kingdom, they can almost become the most influential force on the continent. In the space deep in the temple, Shen Xian looked at the billions of planes as boundless as the starry sky. In a place where he could see, there was an alien plane with 2 diamond-shaped continents, which was a virgin land without religious beliefs reported by players. There are not only the beliefs that gods and demons want, but also a 3-3 with a noble status in the gate. A long time ago, since the first-level administrator and the second-level administrator had an accident, 2 of the only 4 third-level administrators lost contact. No one believed that they were betrayed, and no one believed that it was an accident. In short, it was because of the influence of uncontrollable factors that eventually led to chaos in the management and contact of a large part of the members under the gate. To this day, this potential danger still exists. However, not long ago, 3-3 sent a confirmation letter to confirm his identity. In the gate, 3-3 is not a very likable character. Therefore, some people always feel that there are some unknown secrets about his distance from the gate since the incident and his return to the gate now. They need to accept him. The gate itself lags behind in the number of talents. If they are really ranked, they are not much better than Mormon. Therefore, they always need to accept returners. 3-3's game name is Hand Cramps, and his strength is in the top 10 of WTP. Because he entered the game 3 months later than ordinary players, he lagged behind other players in development and settled in the other plane. The valley town in the north of the other plane is a prosperous town leading to the primeval forest. Now it has become a place ruled by a kingdom called Mu. The size of the kingdom is 792 territories, which just accommodates 900,000 people. It is the richest country nearby. Because there is no faith, the kingship is supreme. In addition to large and small countries in the other plane, there are hundreds of primitive tribes in this place with a terrible high forest coverage rate. Handcramps was asking for help for them. He relied on a town and 5,000 troops to become the boss of the kingdom Mu along the coast, but his actual level was only 93. Lagging behind many players in the first echelon. If the players in Mu are civilized people, the tribes living in the jungle are the local primitive indigenous people, backward and barbaric, and completely uncivilized. Every year they are harassed by the primitive indigenous people who rush out of the jungle, and they take away a large number of women, children, and livestock, which seriously threatens the development of Mu. Handcramps can't do anything about it. The coastal area is too small and the development space is limited, while the jungle where the indigenous people live is too vast. The number of more than 5,000 territories will take hundreds of years to turn into plains even if they are cut down day and night, not to mention using 900,000 people to occupy and destroy them. Handcramps hopes that they can conquer this continent with religion, and even another piece in the other plane, the East continent where a powerful empire is said to exist. After receiving the invitation, Chris was unable to cooperate with Shen Xian as he had a mission, so Shen Xian could only appear in the valley town alone. Handcramps met him solemnly and introduced his identity to the people around him. At the same time, he told them that they didn't need to worry about the sunset cult. Handcramps looked very young, just a little older than Shen Xian, about 30 years old, and gave people the feeling of a gentle and refined scholar. He was not very strong and chose the profession of a magician. In reality, Handcramps was a scientist. He was not the kind of madman who spent all day in the research institute, but he still had a superior status in the sect. The two had never met in the past. Shen Xian only learned some information from confidential information, such as Handcramp's appearance, personality, position, etc., and because of Handcramp's silence in the past, there were only a few people who had interacted with him in the sect, except for some old people. Handcramps was well prepared. In addition to introducing the purpose of the sunset cult and calming the emotions of the residents, he also provided them with intelligence on the edge of the forest so that they could understand the distribution and movements of the enemy. They didn't even say a few words. As for the Handcramp, he seemed to be taciturn and only spoke to achieve his goal. After seeing the Handcramp, Shen Xian stayed in the valley town for a few days, waiting for the arrival of reinforcements. Iofer's Dark Light Corps, this is the most terrifying 3-turn elite of the Sunset God cult, composed of a total of 1,000 level 90 big devils. One day, the teleportation array located in the territory of South Africa Star emitted a strange light and transported big devils to the valley town. The dark light lurked not far from the valley town, quietly waiting for the horn of attack. Another more mobile Bloody Cross also sent 500 players over through the teleportation array. Their average level was nearly 85, not much different from the dark light. Shen Xian climbed up a small hillside, from which he could see the forest with no edge in sight. Two Jukun stood beside him, paying attention to the surrounding environment to prevent the enemy's sneak attack. The distribution of tribes within 100 kilometers is shown on the map column, marked with marks, divided into 67 villages, with nearly 1,000 people in the big ones and 100 people in the small ones, with a total of about 30,000 people. Now they need to discuss whether to conquer these natives by force or send missionaries to deal with the rumored kingdom with a population of tens of millions in the middle of the forest. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Buletin Lau Buletin Si Buletin Me. Chapter 458. Shen Xian's idea is to conquer and completely wipe out the indigenous tribes in the forest for Zigo Town and Mu Kingdom. Compared with sending missionaries, it takes almost the same time as preaching to the cavemen. Not only that, preaching to the cavemen at least does not threaten, while the indigenous tribes with strong hostility to outsiders may be in danger of death. Slaughter never needs a reason, it is nothing more than whether the leader is decisive. Looking at the small villages with primitive style within a range of 100 kilometers, it is better to kill them off than to waste time to collect a little bit of insignificant faith. Tujukan listened to the order and led the bloody cross to one direction, while the great devil Gulliant accepted the mission and led the dark light to another direction. Shen Xian followed the team alone. In the jungle, except for some terrible ancient monsters, there were only a few people who threatened his life. Relying on the map, they circled the mission areas of the two teams and adopted a sweeping approach, destroying the indigenous villages in the jungle while driving the fugitives deeper into the jungle, so that they could send scouts to track the fugitives and find new indigenous villages. For them, who were not yet civilized, it was difficult to understand that their escape would expose more of their own positions, unless there were players. And the troops in each direction were enough to suppress the regular army of 10,000 people. Even the large tribes with a population of tens of thousands and thousands of troops had no chance of competing with them. On the first day, they advanced more than 40 kilometers inward and destroyed 21 villages. In the ruins of the remaining villages, dozens of charred wooden houses were arranged in a ring. In the center was a bonfire, which was a gathering place. In addition to a large number of human corpses, there were also giant beasts that turned into bones. Some of the giant beasts' bones were directly made into weapons and equipment. However, due to the lack of sophisticated skills, most of the equipment scattered on the ground was damaged and was only worthless ordinary grade. Through his eyes, he could sense the red-wronged souls wandering in the ruins, entangled around the corpses and floating around. His other purpose was to summon these wandering souls through the ritual of the soul and turn them into priceless materials. Unyielding souls can be transformed into the essence of the dead. The souls of criminals are the basis of the heart of hell. The magic of the dark faction and the undead faction involves the field of souls, and they are quite good at making props with living people and corpses. He released his skills, and a scarlet magic circle appeared under his feet. The souls that were not taken away by the god of death within a few hundred meters were torn by a powerful force and pulled to the center. A dark green, flame-like octahedral crystal condensed and slowly formed. There were more and more souls around, and the evil curses of the souls resounded in his ears. The eardrum seemed to be filled with waves of hissing and wailing, making it hard for people to continue the ritual. With a bang, the ghost fire devoured the gathered essence of the dead, as if it was being hammered with the help of a blacksmith, and the level of the essence of the dead became higher and higher. At first it was excellent, and eventually it became rare. Shen Xian reached out and grabbed it, then walked towards the next village. With a bang, the chief of the Zulu tribe, the player Xialo, looked at the broken clay pot under his feet and his bloody hands in astonishment. She is a witch doctor. As a player, she has been the village chief for almost 4 or 5 months. From a small hut to a slightly sturdy wooden house, from a few people to a village with nearly 1,000 people, she has put in a lot of effort. There are not many players who can farm like her peacefully. It's just because there are many monsters nearby that they have been harassed. Xialo stood up. Just now, she used the soul vision skill and followed a hunter she knew back to the village that had just been destroyed. She saw a group of big demons she had never seen before burning the forest and summoning meteors to destroy the village. The highest level 50 soldier rushed up and was grabbed by the big demon and held in his hand. He had no power to resist. His bones were crushed and turned into a pool of blood and flesh scattered on the ground. What a horrible scene! Xialo was trembling all over. The big devil summoned tens of thousands of fallen devils and lust devils to chase the fleeing villagers and burn them to death. Every time a person died, Xialo, who was extremely sensitive to souls, would find that the soul of the dead was caught and turned into food for the devil. Chief, there are more than a dozen refugees from other villages who have escaped. Should we take them in? A servant came in and looked at the chaotic scene in the room in astonishment. Xylo raised her head awkwardly and suddenly thought of the role of this group of refugees who survived by chance. Could it be that the devil's next target of attack is them? Xylo thought worriedly and said to her servant, "Let them in. I want to ask them questions. Also, the whole village is ready to fight." The harsh words made the servant aware of a sign before the storm. After half an hour, the warriors of the whole village gathered around a big bonfire. After the buffs of several old witch doctors, because there were no fences and other city defense facilities, the warriors lined up neatly at the entrance of the village, waiting for the scouts' report. The one who attacked the Zulu tribe was the Bloody Cross of Tujukan. Among dozens of targets, the Zulu tribe was the largest one. From a distance, the other side seemed to be ready. The young warriors in the village gathered together to fight for everything in the village. Shadows covered everything in the Zulu tribe, and the neat and powerful footsteps seemed to foreshadow the coming of the god of death. In the field of vision, the elite players in dark golden armor were advancing along the vague path trampled out, and their eyes were like wolves seeing sheep. "Invaders, what is your purpose?" Xylo still wanted to make a final struggle to save the village. In her only gaming experience, she had few opportunities to interact with players because the jungle was so dense that both development and communication were extremely difficult. Tujukan glanced at the woman standing among a group of warriors. It is undeniable that the woman looked quite good and was a beauty, but there was a trace of disdain in his eyes. Because of the helmet, only his sharp and powerful eyes could be seen. The footsteps did not stop, and the threat was still approaching. The warriors of the opposite tribe relied on each other, but their bodies began to tremble involuntarily. The evil breath had already controlled their bodies, making the warriors feel fear and hesitation as if they had seen a monster. Xylo continuously released the single unit perseverance technique, releasing it again and again, quite smoothly. This was the only game skill she mastered. However, at this time, the player with the bloody cross was only 10 meters away from the warrior who had just gotten rid of fear. A stronger sense of oppression, like a raging storm, suddenly appeared. The air seemed to freeze into ice in an instant. The warriors' hearts beat violently and their eyes widened. "Wait, what do you want to do?" "Revenge for the players of the Mu Kingdom." Only the level 65 Xylo remained unaffected and asked firmly. Yes, Tujukan could only answer her like this, and the players around him had basically released their buffs and could immediately enter the close combat. The Zulu tribe has never walked out of the jungle. "Don't fight anymore," Xylo said in an almost begging tone. "I see," Tujukan replied coldly, "don't forget that we are from the evil camp." At that moment, the soldiers began to charge, dozens of heavy swords fell from the air, and a storm of sand and stones was rolled up. The native warriors in front could not devote themselves to the entire battle at all. They could not control their bodies and could only wave wooden and bone weapons weakly to make random counterattacks. The next moment, the player took a step forward, and it felt like a huge wave. The warriors in the front were crushed into pieces by the strong fighting spirit. Blood rained in the sky, and broken limbs and arms fell under the feet of the players. They would take a step forward every few seconds. Almost no soldiers or buildings could survive. Although the Zulu tribe was powerful, the player with the bloody cross could easily fight 1 against 4. Moreover, after the previous massacre, when the refugees who escaped saw them again, the fragile will of the people collapsed instantly. They shouted, "The devil is coming," and ran away. The originally orderly tribe became a mess. Men and women took their children and their belongings and ran to the depths of the dense jungle, where they could get shelter. Xylo looked at it, her body weak, not knowing what to do. Several running residents were killed less than a few meters away from her, and blood was all over the ground, while the servants guarded her and dragged her to take her away. But their strength was too weak, and they couldn't hold on in front of a group of ferocious players. In a few seconds, the two personal guards were bypassed by the player's graceful movement. With one skill, Xylo was killed instantly. Then he began to deal with the servants who were at a loss after losing their leader. Xylo looked at her own corpse. Are they devils? She didn't know. She was very angry. Should players be allowed to kill people everywhere in the game? Could it be that as a female player with no ability, she can only be bullied like this? It can only be said that the system has long been established. There has never been a law in the wilderness to restrict the behavior of players. Only the law of the jungle is the unchanging truth. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Buletin Lau Buletin Si Buletin Me. Chapter 459. All the villages within 100 kilometers of the valley town were cleared, and the indigenous forces that had never encountered such a terrible attack were wiped out. Dusk City also obtained a lot of rare and epic materials, which are essential for making epic, legendary and even artifacts. In the night, the Light of Darkness and the Bloody Cross are still in action, not only for the valley town, but also for the Dusk City. Shen Xian found that the probability of obtaining the essence of the dead or other materials through killing is very high. The more than 30,000 people who died alone were transformed into 2 epic essences of the dead and 1 epic blood crystal, and there were dozens of rare ones. I don't know why. At least, there is no such high probability in other places. From the current situation, the indigenous people of the jungle do not have faith, but they are similar to ancient religions. They worship their ancestors and gather the power of faith. After completing the clearing of the 100-kilometer range, deeper intelligence was investigated. In the 500-kilometer range, there are more indigenous people, with a total of 100,000. As long as they are cleared, the threat to Mu will be completely eliminated. However, Shen Xian did not want to stop because of this. A group of natives who were not protected by the gods were simply the best food for the devil. If they were all killed, the soul power absorbed would be enough to create several pieces of epic equipment. While the 2 elite troops were encircling the enemy, he ran to Chris's kingdom alone. As a great wizard, Chris had the best alchemy laboratory. At this moment, Chris was sleeping and had no time to manage the development of the kingdom of God. Shen Xian wanted to use this place to create a legendary equipment. In fact, the manufacturing conditions of epic and legendary equipment are not as difficult as imagined. Generally speaking, forging level 6 can make relatively basic epic equipment. Under the conditions of sufficient materials and suitable environment, the only constraint is time. Forging is like building a house, and it cannot be completed instantly. Generally speaking, epic equipment takes at least a dozen hours. These dozen hours can be used to browse the web. In short, the characters will work there and it is impossible to level up and fight. If you want to make legendary equipment, in addition to more difficult and expensive materials, the time will increase exponentially, requiring hundreds of hours. Artifacts cannot be made by mortals. The minimum standard for making artifacts is generally 15 levels of forging or other manufacturing skills, and having medium divine power among the gods. Regardless of success or failure, the gods will become very weak for a period of time, so the number of artifacts is the least. Shen Xian, who knows the secrets of the gods, can now make legendary items. He is not a full-time production player. The problem is that he is currently no different from a god. Every god is versatile, and so is he. Because there is a little known setting in Realm, the speed at which the skill level of gods increases is several times that of mortals, so it takes gods much less time to become an alchemist than normal people, so gods can have more opportunities to master a variety of auxiliary skills and combat skills. Shen Xian has several manufacturing-related skills such as level 10 forging, level 8 alchemy, level 7 enchantment, level 7 gems, and level 4 tailoring. The legendary items he can mainly make are limited to some armor or weapons. He chose a two-handed warhammer. The warhammer will not receive damage reduction when attacking buildings, and the epic warhammer is relatively rare in the collection of Dusk City. A large piece of black iron ore was thrown into the furnace and turned into molten iron. This small furnace is not as convenient as the naturally formed volcanic furnace, but through the improvement of Chris's alchemy, a little magic crystal can be put into it to create endless explosions, thereby achieving the effect of increasing the temperature. The rest, in addition to the basic material black iron 50 units, there are 10 units of crystal, 10 units of magic crystal, and 10 units of fine gold. After heating, the ore slowly flows into a void space and changes into the shape of a hammer. There is no need to repeatedly hammer each armor piece like a blacksmith. After a ritual, it is directly a carved shape. The front end is a completely rectangular shape, which is the most commonly used style of the dwarves, and humans may modify the hammerhead to become a cone or sphere to increase the penetration. For legendary weapons, these technical things do not affect the final attributes of the weapon at all. The handle of the two-handed hammer seemed to be integrated with the hammerhead, with a faint pattern on it, giving people a heavy and rough feeling, just like the big iron hammer used by construction workers to demolish walls. And this is exactly the effect that Shen Xian wanted to achieve. He only completed the first step and made a rare two-handed hammer. It took him 2 hours. This efficiency is not much worse than that of Goldfinger, the boss of the production system players. If a rare weapon can be made in a few minutes, it is really a terrifying thing. Black Iron Warhammer, rare level, attack power 2100, condition level 86, strength 5200, constitution 5600, attack enhancement 25%, causing an additional 20% damage to buildings. From the property point of view, the properties of this rare two-handed hammer are excellent. Except for the high-level requirements, it can definitely meet the needs of most ordinary players who can't afford epic weapons. The second step is that he carefully draws the prepared magic pattern on the two-handed hammer as tall as a person, not only for decoration, but also to allow the magic energy to flow freely. Then soak it in the liquid of dead spirit essence. Under the control of a magic circle, the souls of the dead in the dead spirit essence will gradually become part of the two-handed hammer. Then use the Heart of Hell and the Abyss Crystal to perform the same treatment with the magic circle. With each step, the terrible auras surging on the war hammer will deepen, showing green, red, and blue, appearing and disappearing from time to time, as if there is a terrible thing living in it. The cost of each of the 3 special materials is hundreds of thousands of gold, and each step took 6 hours. If it weren't for the speed of manufacturing in the alchemy laboratory, it would really take a week of real time to complete this legendary weapon. After 3 rituals, the legendary weapon was officially completed, the name changed, and most importantly, Shen Xian's name was still on the maker column. Even if you look directly at the two-handed hammer, you can also find a symbol of identity in a corner of the hammerhead. Soul Roar, legendary, attack power 4300, condition level 95, strength 7000, constitution 8000, attack enhancement 47%, attribute enhancement 12%, life recovery 10, causes additional damage to believers, up to 15%, reduces the attributes of the attacked by 11%, lasts for 3 seconds, and increases experience points by 20%, Maker, Lord. In general, the cost is only 1.9 million, and such a legendary can usually be sold for 5 million, which is equivalent to 10 houses, 50 cars, or 500 medium-level special game equipment in this era. Therefore, if you are unemployed, being a professional blacksmith in the game is also very profitable, and you can earn millions a month, and this kind of income is basically the top among players. Evaluating the attributes of the Soul Roar, it belongs to the lower end of the legendary level. There is no problem with normal use, and it can also speed up the leveling speed, but without talent and skills, it is like a weapon that has lost level absorption and range attack skills, and its value has shrunk by at least 50%. This is the first time Shen Xian has made a legendary item. Just when they were wondering who would use this weapon, at this moment, far away in the jungle, the Bloody Cross encountered a strong opponent for the first time, a legendary country, an ancient country in the forest, the Kingdom of Uluru. Online game Dungeon Master. Author, Buletin Lao Buletin Si Buletin Me. Chapter 460. The history of the alien plane cannot be verified, and the past of the powerful countries that existed on this continent is even more blurry. From a geographical point of view, the Mu Kingdom in the north of the continent is a brand new player country. In the past, there has never been a country in this place. The existence of a unified country is entirely based on the mutual alliance of scattered military towns, thereby developing and even resisting terrible enemies. 80% of the total 50,000 territories in the central part of the continent are occupied by forests and are divided into several regions. Two of them, Uluru and Tumen, have been passed down among northern villagers for generations and are taboos that are absolutely impossible to touch. Once upon a time, the ancestors of the north led an invincible army deep into the jungle, annihilated countless indigenous tribes, and defeated the arrogance of this group of bandits who lived by plundering. However, because of offending Uluru, hundreds of the soldier eventually died in a foreign country. The southern part of the continent is a world with rolling hills and open terrain. Because of its backward productivity, it only controls lower levels of magic and fighting spirit. The southernmost part has the largest number of cities and countries, and then the distribution gradually becomes sparse and inaccessible, until it spreads to the Kingdom of Mu. A few hundred kilometers to the south, it was blocked by a raised mountain range, which ultimately blocked land communication with Mu. Only the coastal road allowed communication between the two sides. The population of the continent is about 40 million, which is equivalent to 1/5 of a continent on the main material plane. It only refers to the surface world. It can roughly provide them with the beliefs of 20 million people. The information on the other continent is currently unknown. That's not clear yet. After clearing out hundreds of thousands of indigenous people in the dense forest, they finally encountered an army from the Uluru Kingdom who came to protect the indigenous people after receiving the news. The number was 2,000. Of course, the result was victory. The enemy was beaten to a pulp. They only fought to the death to eliminate a few elites. Most of them were safe and sound. No one can guarantee that there will be no strong people in a powerful country. Once faced with such a situation, the mortality rate of third-level elites will be greatly increased. For the limited number of super high-level elites, Shen Xian cannot use them as cannon fodder. In the end, we still need to come over to discuss the next attack plan. In the forest, at the predetermined meeting point, two elite groups slowly appeared. Along the way, there was no cover-up. The forest was in flames, and birds and beasts were running around. Along the way, the big devil was burning, killing and looting. It was similar to the blood-stained cross, but it was more capable of killing than lacking in destructive ability. We need to determine whether to continue attacking the Uluru Kingdom. Will the players who went to investigate come back? Shen Xian asked. Not yet, Tujukan replied, but he had investigated the information on the internet. There are quite a few players' guilds in the Uluru Kingdom. They are all elite guilds. They have a high status in the kingdom and almost influence the king's decisions most of the will. It can be said that the next step has little to do with Zigo Town. These actions are only done for the purpose of plunder and destruction. Shen Xian pondered, about the completion of the clearance within 500 kilometers, has the notification hand cramped. Nodding, notified. In fact, I have been paying attention to this matter. In recent days, There are rumors on the internet that the Mu Kingdom summoned powerful players in the kingdom to redeem 500 million gold in kingdom. I believe that after a week, the Mu Kingdom the number of territories will be expanded to 1,000 pieces. They acted very quickly. Shen Xian did not express any opinion on the news. He blinked but fell into thinking again. If there is no greater benefit in the short term, we cannot continue to send troops in, and using local strength is far from enough for the Mu Kingdom, not to mention that it may not be obtained. You must know that the number of troops in the Mu Kingdom is not large and the quality is not high unless there was support from the south. However, it will take a lot of time to control the south. When the natives in the jungle are ready, they will lose the opportunity and have to fight a prepared battle. We have to build a new camp here. Shen Xian's idea was obviously approved by the great devil Gilliant. Last time, on the coast of the southern continent, with the help of hundreds of thousands of Nagas, they acted unscrupulously and caused chaos on the continent. For the devil, there is nothing more fun than this. Tu Jukan thought about it for a while, but he didn't know whether Shen Xian's opinion was good or bad. Setting up a camp will turn the entire continent into a place where devils live. If they can get ahead of the gods, do it thoroughly and neatly, they can completely take advantage of it. Even if the gods take action, it will be useless. The disadvantage is a waste of time and no faith. Don't think that a group of devils will provide the power of faith. It's just that the development process can proceed simultaneously with the war, complementing each other and not being affected. The idea was passed, and Shen Xian didn't have to worry about the construction. It was not the early stage of the game, and it didn't make any sense whether it was 1 room and 1 warehouse or 2 rooms and 1 barracks at the beginning. 1,000-headed big devil made 10,000-headed little devils through summoning. Then start cutting wood everywhere, collecting resources, digging caves, and building underground palaces. It took less than half an hour to turn the area within 1 kilometer into a construction site. An open area with burning flames was cleared to either build a summoning circle or directly hatch the devil. In the distance, in the night, a few pairs of bright eyes were revealed, staring at the active big devil on the construction site. While observing, they whispered unknown languages and even made weird gestures, making it difficult for people to understand what they meant. The owner of the eyes was not discovered, probably because of the distance. After a while, the people who completed the reconnaissance hurriedly ran deep into the forest. Hundreds of bow hunters who mastered night vision skills lay on the trees, followed the command, and moved in the direction of the construction site little by little. Under their feet, there were more soldiers. No torches were lit, for fear of disturbing the enemy. They all wore simple stitched leather armor and used spears and daggers as weapons. There were no cavalry, except for a large number of witch doctors, who carried totems symbolizing the faith of their ancestors and followed the team under the protection of high-level guards, releasing skills at any time to complete the assistance. This is an indigenous army with tacit cooperation. There were loud sounds of charging and killing in the distance. Looking up, they found the army surrounding them from 2 directions at a glance. A rough count showed that there were about 10,000 people. The only nearby army that could muster 10,000 people was the kingdom of Uluru. They came from the 3 elite guilds, Yalong, Rhapsody, and Proud Blood War Group.